half of 2025 is past us at this point. We're talking about my biggest letdowns. The ones that I said, I have the expectation of this, and it was not met in one way, shape, or form, whether internally, externally, price-wise, component-wise, reason to back it, whatever it may have been, we're talking about them. Are you ready? Where is my head at, and why are they on the list? Let's freaking go. First up, I have to talk about the most recent on the crowdfunding side of things, Lord of the Rings Confrontation, right? Now, they're down from a $3,000 price to a $2,200 price for an over-deluxified, absolutely beautifully looking centerpiece that you will never play as a board game. You know, if I was making pro footballer type money on a weekly basis in the 6 digits, this would be a no-brainer. But for a hobby consumer, this is preying on or is almost predatory in the collector's side of things that our hobby is so well known for as well, especially on the crowdfunding. I give kudos at the same time because you do have the $50 and the $120 pledge as well. And you're putting an out-of-print game back in people's hands. At the same time, I have to be disappointed by the execution of this. Even if this was a War of the Ring Collector's Edition $600 or $700 one, it might be a halfway bitter pill that I would be, at least inkling to swallow. It would be at least in lines with the Strategist Chip Theory pledge situation. But this is just completely unpalatable. And what worries me is this is also opening Pandora's box. Frankly speaking, I'd be shocked if Awakened Realms or Asmodee doesn't come out with something similar on a big box campaign in the future. Because if it funds well at that level, and again, I don't know what internal versus external metrics are going to look like, well, how many you would need to have backed to make this satisfactory as a jump the shark, not jump the shark issue. But it worries me with the trend of things because if anything, we have seen crowdfunding is a follow the leader aspect, right? Everyone based their launch day on CMON's Tuesday because they saw CMON when it all started, Tuesday was the best day. Then Jamie Stegmaier said it based off the statistics. Then everybody now launches on a Tuesday. Then people were slowly trickling away from the FOMO exclusives. And now they're in the over-the-top deluxification. Everything needs a sleeve, a premium coin, and a foil, whatever else may be. Deluxified wooden, super supreme plastic components, fake stretch goals, deluxified galore. It is a copycat league just like the sports leagues are. And if you don't think we're going to see more of this, well, I have some bad news for you. Then, secondly, we have to go back to this because now with all of the news about CMON, you have to wonder where the freaking deuce is Massive Darkness 2 going to land? Massive Darkness Shadows of Dungeon Reach. It's not really Massive Darkness 2, but it's just, it's kind of 3, if you will. Massive Darkness 3 Shadows of Dungeon Reach. It's not 3, but it's 3. We're going with it. But with their financial issues, I said with the Lang trilogy being sold, okay, I understand you got to get some cash. Holy F-balls, Zombicide Asmodee. And that's what worries me. But this is literally the furthest one potentially out of any of their campaigns. So if you're looking at those other, literal dozen and a half that are before this one in terms of needing funding, do you feel confident at all now? I feel on the DC United because that's with Spin Master. I feel a little bit on edge with the Cthulhu season, 16 or whatever that is now, Death May Die. But I worry about this one because it's just so far down the line. How long can you rob Blood Rage to pay for Cthulhu Death May Die? You know what I'm saying, analogy-wise there. So that is what freaking scares me as someone who has a couple $100 tied up between those two campaigns, let alone including this one with the millions of dollars that it raised as well. So then I have to talk about Steamforged and Helldivers II. This raised a lot of money. This raised a fair amount of money, but I went into this going, what is the unique mechanic I like Steamforge's ideas behind things, but I have not always seen the execution in several of these video game based centric IPs as mechanically sound as I prefer. And I don't need like Lacerda level stuff. I need Cthulhu Death May Die stuff, right? Where it's smooth, it's streamlined, it has a purpose. And I look at this and I just went, why am I going to get this now? Mechanistically speaking, I couldn't single anything out that made me go, wow, this is really intriguing. Wow, I have no attachment to Helldivers in general. I am enthralled by this. I think it has the Cthulhu Death May miniatures are too big for the actual pieces. I listened to and read One Stop Co-op Shop's concerns, and that was enough to make me pump the brakes in terms of the, okay, where are things going? And what does the product look like now versus what the hell is it going to look like by the time it actually gets in your hands? Because there was a lot of question mark with Elden Ring. And there are some not as happy people with how that mechanistically is going right now. It's more in lines of the early stages, not as bad as Dark Souls, but it's nowhere near potentially some of your Resident Evil or Monster Hunter from what I've heard. No hands-on, so I can't speak to it. And so that's what I just question. What is the final product going to look like ultimately? How much of these suggestions, how much of these things are ironed out? How much of them are set in stone? Then, this one's going to be controversial. I think Hubworld Aidalon is an absolutely smashing mechanistic approach. But for the price and for the expectation of keeping up with things, and I know you don't have to keep up, but I didn't feel like one set was going to be enough to actually deck build and deck construct. I was hoping for a little bit less keeping up with the model there and just a couple, 2 or 3 set fully constrained, more of like a pagan fate of Roanoke, if you will, rather than an LCG, straight up LCG. I think the mechanistic approach of this game is absolutely outstanding. I have the 2 decks, I played them, I talked about them poorly, but they are really doing something clever with this bluffing and diving through and determining whether or not you want to flip as the attacker your defender's cards, or the defender wants to flip their cards in order to block them from getting into one of the 3 main areas. I think the mechanics, I think it is just so crazy fun in that way of a I know what you know, what I know that you don't know that I know situation. But the pricing and the distribution scheme just left me wanting. And that in combination with my difficulty to deck construct in the first place, I just had to say pass, especially not knowing what the complexity, the ramp up, or the need for cards in decks is going to be going forward, and how much are going to be utilized and how much aren't based off the first when you get the second or the third. So again, not a bad product whatsoever. Probably the best game top to bottom on this list from a just pure mechanic standpoint, but I just was a little disappointed in that sense. Similarly, I really wanted to back Flamecraft Dual, and I just couldn't. Now, I don't know if I'm going to late pledge for this one from Cardboard Alchemy. I was a little displeased by the throw-in of Flamecraft of the expansion in the actual crowdfunding campaign. I wasn't over the top impressed by the Deluxifications or the reason to get it on crowdfunding either. I feel like this is going to be a fine game at retail. It reminds me sort of Radlands in that sense. Sort of like the ongoing Excalibur from Roxley at the time of me filming this. I think the game itself I will have in my collection. But personally speaking, on what I feel like is worth my slight investment deluxified, I didn't feel like Flamecraft Dual was necessarily up what I was looking for. Silver coins, a little fountain miniature are absolutely and utterly not worth it to me whatsoever. But this should be a Hive style token even at retail. And I guess I don't really care whether or not I'm going to make money or lose money on this. But it was, for me, one of those that I just said, as a principle, I don't think it's that different, right? When you show me Roxley's metal swords and the significantly different token styles that are going to be at the 2 other layers, okay. But with this, I didn't feel like that was necessarily the case, even though I love the play style of this abstract, because let's not kid ourselves, it is a pure abstract with a slight thematic incorporation to make the other Flamecraft lovers interested to get it now. So ultimately, it was disappointing for me because I wanted to get this game in my collection as one of the first people because I love this style, but I just couldn't. Similarly, but absolutely completely differently as well, Tomb Raider, the Crypt of Chronos. I look at this and I just go, man, what could have been, right? We've all got these IPs that we love. And I look at this as another example of, I think this is kind of okay, but it reminds me too much of the Far Cry situation as the big letdown, mechanically speaking, of a slog. And the action dice based situation that this provides, I think it could be okay-ish as long as you know what you're going into. But from a comparison wise, why would I get this even as a solo player or even playing at 2 players situation? I just don't think it's going to be what I was hoping for or what even solo casuals are looking for out of a game like this. I don't think it's going to be horrible, but I don't think it's going to be upper echelon either. And so with an IP that you may not see again at all on the board game side of things, I'm always clamoring for just absolute top shelf stuff. And I don't think mechanistically this is going to give it to you in the same way that I don't think Helldivers is, at least at this point, from what we know. I also have to put out there Foxpaw. I did this one from Godot Games, and it was very AI-driven artwork looking back at it. And I don't really care as much about that, but I was really more concerned about the gameplay, details and mechanics first and foremost. And it just felt very disjointed. And I feel like it was going for the Harry Potter tongue-in-cheek Nemesis Alien comparison. And it kind of did that, but the duels felt very disconnected when you've got 2 people dueling and other people betting on it when you can't actually be a part of it necessarily, and not necessarily all having the same amount of turns to do that, as well as the spells along the outside were just kind of there and not as dynamic and changing as you're trying to complete them as well. And yeah, I mean, I like the when you're choosing to move your workers back into the sleep depends on how much and what the place you're going to be in turn order for the next situation is going to be. The games were a little bit all samey in the events section that they had as well. And so again, I just wasn't overly impressed by it as a worker placement game with Euro, style resource management. And that's fine, but that's all I can say was that it was okay-ish. I don't think it's going to make people's top 10 lists. I think it fits well if you're really, really digging in for the Euro Harry Potter style of things. But ultimately, it wasn't what I was hoping for initially when I first saw, holy crap, Harry Potter, the board game, we're actually going to get a good one. Oh man, it just, again, expectations, maybe I'm just, that side of things. Star Trek Ascendancy, the big box as well. Again, I have no problem with you putting out more stuff. Bullet had a campaign expansion that put out more stuff over the top way too much as well. However, like I said with Bullet, I don't need the storage big box. Most storage big boxes, as the saying goes, are coffins where your board games go to die rather than actually able to get them to play. And Ascendancy big box in that way, you have 3 crowdfunding exclusive expansions. And I don't have any problem as that's your incentive to get that on crowdfunding. But I think our hobby has this serious, I'm going to only say that some crowdfunding exclusives are acceptable and some aren't acceptable policy. Simons, horrible. Can't do it whatsoever. Indie game, absolutely okay, right? Like, and I understand size discrepancy, apples and oranges, but at the same time, you're either for exclusives as a reason to get it on crowdfunding or you're not. And these were hugely priced as well. They were like $50, I believe, for each faction content. And that's a lot of money that's going to be tied up in that way. $150 to get them as expansions when there were already like 7 or 10 out. So I'm fine with it, but I have not found with this, with the Firefly game as well, these big boxes are getting you on the FOMO completionist side of things, rather than this is truly going to be some nice content. I mean, again, you can say with any non-exclusive stuff, whether it's Star Trek or Marvel United, you can get the majority of that at retail and you will be fine without it. So again, it's a minor criticism, but with both of them, again, I feel like it's a completionist preying on things more than anything else. And as someone who has fallen prey to that in the past, I just feel like it has to be stated that let's try not to let each other get suckered into that as well. At least, you know, if you don't enjoy that sort of thing. I have to end here with Champions of Midgard, the 10th anniversary edition. Right? Anniversary editions are becoming all of the rage. However, especially with this anniversary edition, I looked at this and I said, why? Right? There already is like an anniversary edition. There already are these premium token upgrades, resource upgrades, everything upgrades. And to put it out again in a different way, it's not like it was done the same as it was previously, I don't believe. So again, it's completionist FOMO wanting to make things prettier, even though there's a slightly pretty version out there. Can you imagine in that same sense? Like I was just talking the other video that I'm going to be doing alongside of this, either slightly before this or slightly after this, my best of crowdfunding, and I'm going with Agricola. And the issue that I have with this, and the reason I'm mentioning it, is can you imagine that Awakened Realms put this out, and then let's say 5 years from now, Awakened Realms comes back to Agricola. I'm not worrying about the pronunciation. I'm sorry. That's my channel. I'm an idiot and I can't pronounce things. But let's pretend they go back to that famous farming game. And 5 years from now, they put out another edition with slightly different art and slightly different tokens and slightly different miniatures. Right? How would you feel then? Would you go after it again? Would you have people feeling like their version is inferior? Now, what if they also included a couple new decks as well, on top of the 20-some decks that are going along with the current campaign? How would you feel that that is not predatory in some way, shape, or form? That's my problem with it as a whole. And that's also why I have to mention that game just from the first standpoint, is because you are getting people in who are so concerned about the availability of those decks in the first place, for example, that they are concerned that although they will never play half of those decks, if they don't have them, again, the game will be incomplete. So you're getting people to sucker in and buy at the higher level overall. And that bothers me because, again, what's the availability of these going to be like post-campaign? That's the big question mark. And so because it's not often announced in that way, people FOMO. And I don't like to see people FOMO. I don't know about you. So there you go. Those are my biggest disappointments on crowdfunding so far this year. Again, not saying bad games, but saying expectations, price point, delivery, execution, all of those things in some way, shape, or form contributed to why I had it on this list. Let me know how wrong, as always, am I. Stay classy. Peace out. Have a great freaking day.